off the night, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that. And by the way, I'm recording tonight, and it will be available later on YouTube, so I can get the links out to people if they want to watch it again. Okay, let's see. What am I reading? I am reading something I wrote a little while ago and have been revising recently. I'm remembering a time of great grandparents, grandparents, elderly aunts and uncles who I'd see twice a year when I was a kid, at Christmas and at midsummer family picnics. They were strange yet very lovable beings who'd bring their stories, their laughter, their ability to blow smoke rings, pull nickels out of our ears, their rum and coke cackling and cigarette hacking, their loving cooing and wooing over us kids. At the center of all of these was my grandfather, his older sister, Aunt Ivy, and his two brothers, Uncle Wally and Uncle Len, all of them from jolly old England, with their songs and stories from the good old music hall days, fish and chips wrapped in yesterday's news, and foggy streets of East London. Uncle Len, I remember him standing over us, slightly stooped, ruffling our hair, about to take stage as he did every summer. Kids, he'd say, did I ever tell you about the time we came over on the Titanic? Or was it the Lusitania? Now, Len, teased Aunt Ivy, don't be telling those children your tall tales. Oh, sure, he'd grin. Kids, how about the time I told you, did I ever tell you about the time I sold shoes? Have I told you this one before? And of course he had, lots of times, every summer, and sometimes at Christmas, he'd tell us the story. And we'd pretend that we hadn't heard it before and encourage him to tell us, while the adults simply groaned. See, Uncle Len had sold shoes in a small town store for many years. He enjoyed his work, and he developed good relationships with all his customers. He was a natural salesman, his customers very loyal, some of them coming to him for years and years, decades. Some brought their children and their grandchildren. One day, an old woman, one of his regular customers, came in looking for a pair of new shoes, a very particular pair. In fact, she had a cutting from a woman's magazine illustrating the very pair that she wanted, a pair of high heels in black, shiny leather. Uncle Len's shop didn't have that particular pair in stock. However, he knew that he could order them and have them in about a week or two, but that would mean she wouldn't get them right away. Or, and he'd always pause at this point, he'd look left and right, and he'd lean in really close for dramatic effect, and he'd say, well, I had seen those shoes across the street in the window of the town's other shoe store. So what did I do? Uncle Len would ask us. And we'd all stare blankly, because we knew that Uncle Len was going to tell us. He said, I could see how badly that woman wanted those shoes. Now, if I tell her where she can get them, if I tell her that she can go across the street, well, she'd appreciate my honesty and my goodwill. And yes, she might buy the shoes from my competitor, but I know that she'll come back to me again in the future, because she knows I'm an honest salesman. And so that's what he does. He tells her that she'll find the shoes across the street. The old woman thanks Uncle Len and heads off to buy the shoes. Well, at that point, Uncle Len straightens up and smiles, and he waits for one of us to say, what happened next, Uncle Len? And by now, the adults sitting nearby in their lawn chairs and at picnic tables are guffawing and moaning. Well, says Uncle Len, suddenly there was a screech of brakes and a sickening thud, and he punches his palm for effect. I hear a scream, he says. I run out to see what's happened, and lo and behold, that old lady that I've just been talking to is lying in the street, hit by a car while she was crossing over. I'd sent her. I felt terrible. And at this point, Uncle Len wipes his forehead with his handkerchief and hangs his head, looking very guilty. And then he turns slightly and winks at the laughing adults who are pleading for him to stop. Oh, those poor kids, my grandmother chides. Len, you should know better. Now, I've heard the story many times. I mean, I'm 13 years old, so I've had a long time to hear this story. But at 13, I'm old enough to start wondering about the story's moral implications. I surmise that Uncle Len is suggesting that somehow it was his fault that the woman was hit by the car. But how could he have known that the accident would happen? I mean, wasn't he doing a good deed by telling the woman the truth about where she could find the shoes she was seeking? I mean, certainly she'd be happy and grateful to Uncle Len. And shouldn't she have maybe been more careful crossing the street? Maybe the driver should have been more careful. Who was at fault? Thing is, Uncle Len, he didn't tell us any more. It was always at that point he'd turn and walk away. He wouldn't answer our questions. Did the woman live? Was she dead? Who was at fault? Was it fate? Was it God's fault? To be honest, I never quite figured that story out. But I knew that we'd hear it again next year. And I'd figured that maybe one day when I was older, I'd understand it. Well, the years passed by.
Everybody's in.
The years passed by. Aunt Ivy and Grandpa, Uncle Wally, they all passed away. Family picnics faded into memory, and as did Uncle Len. But one night the phone rings. It's my brother, Mark. Remember Uncle Len, he says. Yeah, why? Well, he's not well. He's in the hospital. He's dying. Mark and I arranged to visit the hospital and pay our regards. When we arrive, Aunt Betty is keeping vigil over her husband. Both of them are in their early 90s. Aunt Betty welcomes us with a hug and an invitation to sit with her. Uncle Len is lying in bed. He's in a coma. He's unconscious. He has been for some time. Death is imminent. Mark asks if it's okay to sit beside Uncle Len. Well, I don't know if he'll remember you boys, Aunt Betty says. But if you'd like to sit with him, you're welcome. Mark sits down beside Uncle Len's bed and gently takes his hand. There's no response. It's obvious death is very near now. But still, Mark explains who we are, offers greetings from our other siblings. And then, after a long silence, we ask Uncle Len if he remembers a story that he used to tell us at the family picnics, about the old lady who came in to buy a pair of shoes. And between Mark and I, we retell the story to our comatose uncle. And once again, the story ends with that indeterminable dilemma hanging in the air. Whose fault was it? I ask. Mark and I look at one another. We turn to Aunt Betty. Don't ask me, she laughs. I'm just surprised you boys remember the story at all. Just then Mark looks back at Uncle Len and then at me. What is it? I ask. He just squeezed my hand. We look back at our unconscious uncle. There are tears on his cheeks. That night, a story, remembered, returned from the distant past, hovered over us before flying deep into the mystery of a dying man. And somewhere in that chasm, it returned, I believe, to his soul, reverberating in that nearly imperceptible squeezing of a hand, a gentle, loving acknowledgement, an expression of gratitude for remembering. And for the first time, I felt as if I finally understood the point of Uncle Len's story. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, Michael, that was beautiful.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Just for anyone who's new to us, Michael has been reading with us every month. He is our resident reader, as previously told. Sorry, big sunbeam on me. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
It's been really cool hearing you read. I think you're amazing and you're so kind and talented and everything. Did you want to tell people what you're working on lately?
Well, yeah, just a couple of things. I think I've told you before, Joanne. I had always wanted to be a writer since I was, well, 13. When my grandmother gave me a little black notebook, and she called it a journal, and she said you should start keeping a journal, and I have off and on ever since I was 13 years old. So when I was a teenager, when I was finishing high school, I wanted to become a writer. I thought, well, I'll go to university and I guess that's where you go to become a writer. Unfortunately, my father was dead set against it. He was very working class. He wanted me to work in the steel company here in Hamilton. Nice, safe job, make money, buy a house, get married, have a family, that kind of thing. So I left home and I ended up working in the mines, down about 3,600, 3,800 feet underground. And I figured, well, this will make my dad proud. This is a good working man. And then a man about my dad's age one day came up to me and took me aside and he said, Michael, you don't belong here. And I thought he was criticizing my work. I wasn't working hard enough. And he said, no, it's not that. He said, you don't belong here because you have an imagination. You belong, he pointed up, through the rock. You belong up there. And I thought, how ironic that a working man like my dad was telling me just the opposite. He said, you should go and be a writer, he said. I said, oh, thanks a lot. So I did. I left the mines, but it took me a long, long, long time to, I guess I had to have a life first before I could settle down and start writing. And when I moved back, I lived in Scotland for many, many years. And when I moved back to Hamilton here, I joined the Hamilton Mountain Writers Guild. And I think Anita is here from the guild, and there have been other people here as well. And that was a great help, belonging to a small group where other writers like myself, we gave each other feedback and encouraged one another. And then more recently, two other writers that are here tonight, June Cupido and Margaret Terry. And we've formed a little group where we can trade each other's work with one another and give each other feedback. And I must say, to anybody who's starting out, if there's any tip I could give, I would say find at least two or three or more trusting writers, trusting friends, people who will just be honest with you and give you constructive, feedback. And that has really encouraged and inspired me to just write and write. And now I'm like just a faucet that you can't turn off, I just love it. So COVID has been a blessing in one way. It's a curse for many in another, but it's meant that I've had fewer distractions and had to stay home. And so I just write. Write. So, I guess maybe it's a hallmark of being older, but I'm writing now about my childhood, realizing what fertile ground it actually is. I never really thought much about it. In fact, most of it I wanted to forget. But with help, I'm kind of going back to that territory and exploring it again and finding the characters in it that, like Uncle Len and others, who actually really mean a lot to me. And when I think more deeply about them, I realize some of the things that they said and told me, and turning them into stories. So that's I'm working on a memoir piece, but it's really more it'll probably be a series of, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 stories. The first volume will be between sort of the ages of 4 or 5 and when I left high school. And if I live long enough, I'll do an adult volume. But in the meantime, I'm just having fun with what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. If anyone has any questions for Michael, please feel free to ask him. If not, we always do a Q&A at the end as well, but feel free to ask him anything right now. Anyone?
I was just curious because you wanted to do your own autobiography. Are there any biographers you particularly enjoy? Because I'm listening to you speak, your Scottish accent brings to mind the Irish accent of Frank McCourt, who's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, Angela's Ashes. Yeah, and in fact, I try to read all kinds of memoir material. I just finished reading Danny Shapiro's memoir called Hourglass, um, which is probably very different than something I would write. But I do learn. I learn from everything. Stephen King's sort of treatise on writing, but it's also in a sense a memoir. It's about his life. I enjoy that as well. Some of the other names just escape me, but um, Lane, the Canadian writer, Patrick Lane. I've just read his memoir, and his love for gardening as well. Now I won't write like them, but I love there's all little bits you take away and you remember. I love Alistair, the Canadian novelist Alistair MacLeod, the late Alistair MacLeod. Really a wonderful writer, and I mean a short story writer and a novelist. But his short stories read like they are based on his childhood memories. And in fact, some of you, if you know Alistair MacLeod's work, you would have noticed a little tribute that I paid to him right at the beginning, because Alistair, who I knew briefly, Alistair often began his stories with, "I am remembering a time when," and he'd have it's like the equivalent of "Once Upon a Time" that storytellers use. But Alistair would always, not always, but very often would begin that way, and it was very trance-like when the way he said it. And so tonight, remembering Alistair, I just thought, I am remembering a time of my grandparents, great grandparents. So little things like that, seep into your work from other writers. So yeah. Anyway, I don't want to take time. We got lots of really good writers here tonight. So, and being a storyteller, I could talk on and on and on. But shut me up, Joanne.
No.
Don't encourage anybody to ask any more questions. There's some lovely comments in the chat, and I appreciate those.
Yeah, please, everyone, please make some comments for everyone tonight. We do love it. It's fun. So yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.
Our next reader is Laura Sims from New York City. Hi, Laura. It's nice to meet you. Nice to see your face.
And thank you, Michael.
Yeah. All right. Laura is an internationally acclaimed storyteller and writer. She combines traditional stories with personal narrative and uncanny and riveting performances. Her teaching engagement and living story is legendary. She is a contributing editor for Parabola magazine. She served as a senior research fellow at Rutgers University Peace Center under the auspices of UNESCO. She won the Sesame Street Sunny Days Award for her work with children worldwide and has appeared at Nobel Peace Festival in Oslo and festivals worldwide. She has written 5 books and saved a zoo in Romania. Her most recent books are Our Secret Territory and The Robe of Love. What are you reading for us tonight, Laura?
Well, I want to ask Michael if it's okay if I don't read from The Secret Territory, but I read from 2 pieces from the new book that I'm just finishing now, because it's
absolutely
much in my would love to have ears. So this book is called Wild Rose, Summoning the Restoration of the World. And this piece that I'm going to read, the first piece, is from the final chapter. Once in Taipei, I took a taxi to the National Museum. Treasures salvaged from mainland China were on display. I could not stop looking at an exhibit of 50,000-year-old bronze cauldrons, each balanced on a metal tripod. I was overcome by the life force of the objects. I thought of Caridon's cauldron where wisdom was cooked, of ancient Anasazi bowls found in caves, and of finely woven baskets treasured by Maori people in New Zealand. A photograph of witches living near Bucharest in the 1990s comes to mind. 3 plump women sitting by a great boiling cauldron outside a thatched hut. Familiar. Up from my memory comes an image of clay dishes with tiny lit candles floating on a river in Janakpur, Nepal before dawn, the birthplace of Sita of the Ramayana. I had been unable to sleep. The hotel where I stayed had an air conditioner that did not work. The heat was stifling. The number of insects who appeared as soon as I put off the light was horrifying. I went to the receptionist. I stayed here because of the air conditioner. But madam, there is an air conditioner, he replied. But it doesn't work, I said. He repeated his own logic, but there is an air conditioner, madam. So I walked out into the dark street. Musicians were singing devotional songs to Sita at the temple. The tiny lights from candles on the water drew me to the steps leading into the river. Downwards, leaning in a gesture of prayer, men and women wearing woven wreaths of flowers around their necks washed themselves, besides others washing children, cows, and cars. In the distance, a body that had been cremated the evening before smoldered beside the shore. As the sun rose, I felt I had been invited to an extraordinary wedding thanks to the defective air conditioner. A wedding between life and death, birth and regeneration, marrying in a place between earth and sky, not unlike the place where Wild Rose and the prince from the story stood in the castle of our waking minds beside an unforgotten forest of our dreams. At the end of the story of Wild Rose that never ends, we arrive at an inner known territory. The child, the promise of the seed of a wedding, the longed possibility that kept the old man and the old woman from dying, ceaselessly blooms in the pre-dawn light of happily ever after. While washing dishes during a late afternoon downpour, I noticed a young pigeon pressing its body against my window to avoid being drenched. When the rain stopped, a large pool of water covered the rooftop across the way. The pigeon's mate flew to the sill. They stood side by side, then flew to the tarmac. They waddled into the water and moved back and forth, washing wings and shaking. Afterwards, the birds sat, wings outspread next to one another in the sunlight. On their gray necks, luminous turquoise and mauve feathered necklaces, iridescent wreaths gleamed. I read that what I see is a small display of color compared to the plethora of hues seen through the eyes of birds. I placed offerings of seeds and unsalted peanuts on the windowsill. I went to the front of my house to find a camera. When I returned, the seeds were gone, the birds were gone. The water was almost dissolved from the heat of the sun, but I heard them. They were loud in the thick green vines that grew on the side of the building. Their throat-trilling chant prevailed. Later that day, cleaning the windowsill beneath the air conditioner, I noticed a transparent oval egg the size of a dappled gem. Sometimes when a story is over, whether my audience is adult or child, a silence prevails. We become the two washed birds vanishing into green vines, singing primordial song. The little girl who once proclaimed at the end of a 55-minute fairy tale, "I already forgot the story," comes to mind. I asked her, "How did you forget so quickly?" She said, "I got married." 6 months after the devastating earthquake, a girl who sat in the back of a tent in Haiti where I was telling a story listened with bent head. When she looked up at the end, I saw that half her face was burned. She walked towards me. She laid her head on my shoulder. When I was 20, feeling the grief of my mother's death, I had a dream which I forgot for a long time. I was walking across an ocean of ice. There was a round hole, the sort carved by Inuit hunters. The head of a walrus, mustached and half submerged, peered out from the ice. He offered me a necklace. I put it on. I awoke. I can almost see it as if I dreamed it yesterday. Yet I cannot describe it. Like the cauldron, the wedding, the burned skin girl on my shoulder, the story of Wild Rose continues inside of us long after it is told. Memory is a victory wreath, a wedding headdress, a funeral offering, an invisible reminder. This story has been the vehicle that has loosened me from grief and loss of faith. Wild Rose flowers in a tender heart. The wreath I offer is not forgetting that we are of this world, a changing story. Knowing summons the restoration of the world, an invitation.
Yeah.
So can I read this other paragraph? Do I have time or am I over?
No, you go for it, Laura.
Okay. So it is time to return to the cemetery where my mother and father are buried. An unremarkable place with unremarkable gravestones. Cemetery. My mother once took me to a cemetery on Fort Hamilton Parkway in Brooklyn. I was 7 years old. It was across the street from Pet Haven, where we dragged my childhood dog for haircuts, baths, and eventually euthanasia. Clipper had been a Hanukkah gift. He was hidden in a shoebox in a shopping bag beneath the grand piano where all gifts were piled. Our version of a Christmas tree. As we lit the 8th candle to celebrate the miracle of 8 nights of light after the destruction of a temple, the puppy began to yelp. I was allowed to open the box and lift up a white ball of fur that fit in my hands. He had one black ear and was wearing small slippers my mother had woven. He was egg white, the color of my ceilings on Broadway now. My mother carried a basket into the cemetery. We rambled until we came to a gravestone shaped like a bathtub. She told me how her mother had taken her for picnics in the cemetery when she was a girl. A bathtub, I repeated, amazed. She read the inscription written by the husband of the deceased, describing how his wife died taking a bath. How does someone die taking a bath? My question went unanswered, like most interesting things. On the grassy knoll, surrounded by angels and crosses on large stones, definitely not Jewish, we ate a lunch of tuna fish sandwiches with sour pickles. I was fascinated by the grave, but put on alert that my mother had inherited this strange habit of taking her daughter to have lunch in a graveyard. Frank.
My great aunt is buried in that cemetery.
Really? Die in a basketball?
Small world.
Fantastic. I'm gonna leave now. You guys are too good. So thank you and goodbye.
Stop. Come on.
Oh, come on.
Thanks, Laura. So do you want to
Yes.
let us know what you're working on right now?
Well, I'm working on finishing this book. So these are some of the last pieces. And I'm working on that. And it's one Romanian fairy tale that goes through 300 pages of memoir and commentary and botany.
How did you save a zoo in Romania? Just
What?
quickly as you can. How did you save a zoo in Romania?
How did I what?
Save a zoo in Romania.
Oh. Well, I was working with Roma women for an organization called Ovidio Rom. And we had helped them to, I was there as the storyteller working with their stories, but we had, through a big grant, gotten wood, and we were helping them to build roofs and toilets for their houses. And then in the middle of winter, one of the women told me that it was so cold in her house the night before that her husband had torn down the wood in the ceiling to make a fire. So I said, oh, maybe I should come and look at it. So I went there, and in my completely inadequate Romanian, I had said to her, I'm so sorry that you're so cold. I mean, it was like Siberia in the north of Romania. And she said, Laura, I am not suffering like the lions. And so I just think, lions. So she took me to a zoo, and
Oh God.
I just had this thought that I maybe could, well, everybody hated the Roma women and their families. So I thought, well, maybe together we could do a project with the zoo. So it just began with my having Sunday brunch with the animals and raising money. And 7 years later, being sort of ejected from that city, but I housed all of the, rehomed all the animals and sent all the lions back to Africa. There's only one still alive, but it was a sort of 7-year obsession where I ran a nature school for Roma children and had the women telling stories in the zoo, and found horse whisperers among the Roma and brought them to help the horses, and sent the bears to England. One of them is still alive. So anyway.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. Does anyone have any questions for Laura?
Actually, I would love to ask Laura a question. I so enjoy the mythic connection of things like overcome by the life force of objects. And I have always loved this about your work, how you interweave everyday stories and people and things into the mythic meanings, all those years at Parabola. But would you talk about that process? Because it's especially wonderful in this piece, not just that example, but the thumbnail definition of memory that goes so deep, connected into all of these different incidents. So if you could talk about how you extract from symbols and mythic ideas the contents of your story. Love it, Laura. Just love it.
Thank you. I mean, in a nutshell, for me, our lives are myth, and myths are deeply personal. So when I'm working on a myth or a fairy tale, I love both genres. I really work in like what's the heart of the story that's taking place. And when I began this book, it was just going to be it was really just going to be about the story. But there was something I thought really boring in the story, and I thought I could jazz it up by telling stories from childhood. And then slowly it was an entire like 7 years of really putting to rest the tragedy that happened with my mother in my life. And it was through the vehicle of this story and able to write about her death and what happened to me during those years and after as a result. So this last chapter that I first read from is called Wreath, W-R-E-A-T-H. And I talk about this before it, but since you don't know about the book, I thought it was silly to read that, but it's called Wreath. And then this story about my mother, I've just pulled it out of the book, the story of the cemetery, to do a separate story of my picnicking in graveyards in other countries as well. But I think the value of myth is that it is symbol, but direct symbol that when we hear, we can really put ourselves into it without having to focus on the preoccupation with our own lives. We're not triggered by it, but it can take us through in some really specific and vaster ways. So I love myth for that reason. And I also think we're in a story that begins and ends. Every minute of our lives, Michael is
Yeah.
spinning, who's working and dying. So,
Thanks for reminding me, Luke.
but I'm stopping. I'm also a storyteller, and I want to hear everybody else. But thank you for your comments and questions. Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to Laura, she does have a website, www.laurasims2ms.com. And if you want to post that in the chat, Laura, and any other social media or any links that you want to, please feel free to do so if anyone wants to contact her. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next reader is Amanda Nova. Hi, Amanda. Do you have snow over there? She's in Winnipeg.
So we had 72 hours of snow this past week. We got more snow in 3 days than we did in the entire winter.
Oh dear.
And then today it's 13 degrees Celsius and sunny. So it's muddy and mucky and gross, and everything is gray and full of gravel and salt. And we're just waiting for some green and some life to come back to our area of the world.
I feel your pain because last year this time we were still having snow in Ontario, so we understand.
I'm in Los Angeles. It's 80.
Stop it.
Sorry.
Stop
what kind of guitar is that?
Oh, this is my daughter's guitar.
Yeah.
My daughter is the musician. She plays both piano and guitar.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So Amanda has read for us before. She's reading again tonight. She is from Winnipeg in Canada. Amanda, between going back to college at 38 and raising an aspiring scientist musician, she writes about love and life. She enjoys movies, music, and reading. She is currently working on publishing her first book of poetry, prose, and photography, This Disaster of Self. So where are you at with your book before?
I'm hoping that pre-sales will be ready in the next 3 weeks.
Perfect.
So just finished my last day of college just this past Monday. So, and found out that I will be graduating with honors. So that's
congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
So I've kind of had to pause the book a little bit so that I could focus on finishing my schooling. But now that I'm going to be, going back to being a real adult and working again, and hopefully I'll have some more time, not stuck with my nose in a textbook, and I can focus on my own book.
Good for you. I'm so proud of you. You're amazing. I'm so excited. So what are you reading for us tonight?
I've got a couple of poems here. So I'll announce the title before each one. And they're all going to be in the book.
Perfect. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So this first one is, it's a tiny one, and it's the opening to my book. Tiny Truth. How blessed are we, the artists, who travel otherworldly into our souls. This next one is, when you read it in the book, it's a forwards and backwards poem. It's called Away, Away. You are wick and I am wax. I melt when you burn. Away. You are ocean and I am sand. I shift when you wash away. You are there and I am here. I break when you walk away. Away you walk when I break. I am here and you are there. Away you wash when I shift. I am sand and you are ocean. Away you burn when I melt. I am wax and you are wick. My cat wants to come read with me. Come on. A pawn. And if I were the words on the page, black upon white, would you read into what I was saying? If I were the chords to the song, flesh upon steel, would you hear the song that I am playing? If I were the waves on the shore, water upon sand, would you feel that I am staying? If I were black upon white, flesh upon steel, water upon sand, would you? Okay. Sorry. I used to only want you. I used to only want you. You used to want me too. Somewhere between the pixels, I began to want more. I want your arms, not just to pin me down, but to hold me up. I want your powerful thighs, inert, a place for my head. I want your fingers in my hair, softly stroking my day away. I want your smile on my pillow and your silhouette in my kitchen. I want the sense of coffee and sex permeating the air. I want to lay against your chest, listening to you tell me stories from the years that we've existed without each other. I want to put my hand on your stomach, the small curve below your belly button, feeling your hair tickle my palm as your laughter fills our lives. I want to watch you play everything from guitar to baby dolls. I want to watch your hands cradle my face as gently as new vinyl. I want to watch every measured moment I've built in my mind. I will take your anger with content if you take my blasphemous love. I used to only want you. Now I want only you. And that's it.
Awesome. Everyone's clapping. You can't hear them, but
Thank you.
I am so excited for you. I can't wait to get your book. I think you're amazing. You know that. I love listening to you speak to you. You have the most beautiful voice. Does anyone have any questions for Amanda? You've got some nice comments on the side if you want to take a look.
Okay.
And please feel free to put your information on there if anyone wants to reach out to you or follow you on any of your social medias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay safe and stay warm.
Yes.
Hopefully no more snow for you. All right, our next reader is Suzanne Burchell. She's from Mount Hope. Suzanne is a dramatic arts specialist, taught drama secondary school, 38 years Brock University drama and education, and 28 years member of Burlington Storytellers Guild and Parsborough Nova Scotia Tellers short story writer, script assistant in Theatre Burlington. All right, Suzanne, what are you reading for us tonight?
Thank you.
Burlington. Yeah, not Mount Hope, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm in Mount Hope is sort of attached to Hamilton, if that helps.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah. But what are you reading?
I have 2 self-published books, Almost a Dozen Tales by the Lighthouse Keeper's Granddaughter, and this one is called Quaint and Quirky Tales. And this is a true story. I'm having a story published next month in the Canadian United Church of Canada. And I was going to do it tonight, but it's a kind of a sad story. And it's spring. We don't need any more sad. It's COVID. We don't need any more sad. So I've decided tonight to, I wrote this in Brian Henry's writing course, and he's wonderful. So I told it at Steel City Stories. They allow you 10 minutes, and if you go over by a second, they haul you off the stage. So this will take 10 minutes. They didn't haul me off. So here it goes. It's a story of my honeymoon. It's called Into the Wilds. Shakespeare says, "We are in a state of madness when we are in love." Looking back, I see that that was the case when I agreed to the honeymoon of my husband's dreams in 1971. I had married a young man from Northern Ontario. His stories of hunting ducks before school and hanging the dead creatures in his locker before school had been enchanting. I loved our differences. I had never been off the sidewalks of Southern Ontario. I believed our differences would enhance our relationship. The circumstances of our marriage were rather grim. A Catholic Protestant union not sanctioned by my side of the family. We were the Protestants. Hence, no reception, no financial support, and to add to this, my husband was still a student at McMaster. We were poor, but in love. Money for a honeymoon was scarce. To this end, my gallant husband concocted what he described as an exotic romantic adventure in his parents' luxurious camper trailer. We would snuggle under the stars in sleeping bags, watch the stars, and campfire at night, and find adventure on the Polar Bear Express to James Bay. The highlight would be an airplane ride over the tundra. We would stay at lovely motels every 3 nights. I prepared for this dreamy honeymoon by packing my trousseau, which every young woman had back in those days, pink, frothy, silky nightgowns, ribbon nighties, and other paraphernalia. Every bride had those back then. I imagined the wonder of cooking on a wee propane stove in a miniature kitchen. I was obsessed with thoughts of the excitement of sleeping with my new husband under the moonlight, under the stars, listening to the magical sounds of the night in the wilds. My upbringing regarding holidays had been in the lovely quarters of a ship. You see, my father was an officer, a chief engineer on the Great Lakes. So our holidays were spent aboard a ship. Meals were made for us, beds were made for us, days were spent on deck watching the scenery of wherever the ship was sailing. Life aboard ship was one of pampering and pleasure. I had a private bath and luxury galore on those holidays. My mother wouldn't let me go to camp, and she never ever thought about taking us to a cottage. Her choice venue was Holiday Inn or hotel with lovely linens and many amenities. In my mind, I could abandon all of this to be in the arms of my husband in the wilds. The day after the wedding, we picked up the camper trailer. It was set up for my viewing by my new in-laws. They stood at attention watching me. I stepped inside, noticing the peeling linoleum floors, patched canvas sprinkled with mildew, and rather used sleeping bags. I looked at the sleeping bags and wondered when they were last dry cleaned and who'd farted in them last. Well, the stove was caked with black something and the table chipped and bent. Never mind. This was part of the charm, and my husband was dancing around in pure delight. Nothing else mattered. Ecstatically, my new husband lowered the canvas and hooked us up to the trailer. Off we went, sitting so close. Didn't have to use seatbelts back then. You could not get a toothpick between us. The first night was in an Algonquin park. We had reserved a site. People came to visit us when they saw the newly married decorated car. My husband set up the trailer. I made a dinner of canned beans and crackers and some cheese. Dessert was marshmallows over an open fire. The campfire was short-lived due to the huge swarms of hard-biting mosquitoes and sundry bugs. I partook of a few lemon gin to settle my growing apprehension. The gin washed down the marshmallows quite nicely. Inside the tent, a few mosquitoes had their way with us. Another gin took away the sting and itch. In the middle of the night, a fierce rainstorm hit. The rain thundered on the canvas and kept us awake for hours and hours and hours. By 3 a.m., the sleeping bags were soaked. I left the trousseau bag unopened. A brave bear was, unbeknownst to us, helping itself to our locked cooler outside. In the morning, there was no food for breakfast and sopping wet clothes and gear. I was not amused. We forged on to Timmins, driving through miles and miles and miles of bush. My husband beamed as he took in the landscape. I tried to sleep away the monotony of bush and bush and more bush. I had not either bathed for 3 days, just sponge bath. My hair was now glued down with hairspray and bits of confetti. Once at the new campsite, my husband directed me to the public showers while he cranked up the soggy trailer canvas. I anticipated a long overdue, hot, steamy, sudsy shower. What I encountered was a wide open concrete shower room with a trickle of cold water from the shower heads. Other women totally naked were seemingly oblivious and scrubbing away. This was not my style. This new bride stormed back to the trailer, still stinky. Undaunted, my amused husband suggested that we find a secluded part of the lake where I could bathe in privacy. I agreed. We found a Shangri-La type of spot. I disrobed while he played lookout. This was naughty and fun. Even if the frigid water was so cold, it sent sharp, painful waves through my smelly body. Partway through scrubbing and into the shampoo, I noticed brown spots on my legs. They wiggled. I ran screaming to the shore, hair full of shampoo. What are these? Oh, they're just leeches, husband responded. I ran back to the trailer, barely clothed. The leeches were treated with salt and fell off, leaving marks of their feasting. In the trailer, I tried rinsing my hair to no avail using a small container and gave up, leaving in the cakey shampoo. I dressed in a tracksuit and proceeded to not speak for the rest of the day. I sat upright that night in my tracksuit. Several lemon gin helped with my itching scalp and fuming disappointed at yet another miserable experience in the wilds. Day 3. Oh, this was to be a motel, mercifully. But husband confided, we had no money for that. After all, the money had been spent on a hitch for the trailer and camping fees. I moved to the far side of the front seat of the car for the several-hour drives to Cochrane. I stared at miles and miles of more bush, and you know what's coming, and more bush. The more bush, the more blissful my husband became. That night, I skipped the marshmallows and plied my very pissed off self with one gin after another after another. The stuff in the trousseau bag was now relegated to stay there, replaced with a tracksuit every night for bedtime. A previous stop at a laundromat and copious coin for the dryers could not undampen the sleeping bags. I now slept cocooned in my raincoat, prepared for nature's gift of unpredictable weather in the wilds, while hubby hunkered in the damp sleeping bags, all alone. Well, I tried to perk up, thinking of the Polar Bear Express on day 4 and of our adventure further north to James Bay. I love being Canadian, and this would be a true, oh, Canada experience. I had seen excursions on the Orient Express train in the movies, so I was looking forward to this exotic train called the Polar Bear Express. The Polar Bear Express was instead grimy, dirty, noisy. It shook and it rumbled, etc., etc. So I decided to sleep away more northern cultural agony. My husband leaned out between the train cars in total awe and joy. I could not sleep due to an accordion player who fancied himself the Tom Connors of the train, singing and stomping and squeezing horrid noises out of his accordion for several long hours. Finally, we arrived at Moosonee later in the day. I hoped to have a rich view of Aboriginal life. Instead, I saw abject poverty. I did enjoy bannock cooked over a fire since I had not eaten in the damp and disgusting trailer for 2 whole days. And you know, lemon gin is not particularly filling. We embarked on the promised plane ride. I was very excited to view Canada from the skies and maybe see a real iceberg. Once in the air, fog set in from an iceberg that had moved inland. We could not see a thing. Thick, thick fog. We could not land for over an hour. I really regretted drinking as many lemon gin as I had the night before. At one point, I thought, oh, we might crash land, and then it would be all over. You know, I thought I would at least end this miserable, ill-beset honeymoon from hell if we did crash. I really wished we would. Oh, well, we eventually landed. Back on the train, I spoke to my husband briefly. Take me home. I will not speak again until you do. We drove almost 2.5 days straight in silence, once back in Southern Ontario. After a sudsy, long, and delicious hot shower, I emerged less worse for wear, but with a new view of going into the wilds. God bless all those folks who find bliss and enchantment camping. But for me, that was the first and the last venture into any place less wild than the good old Holiday Inn or Sheraton. I have given up lemon gin since that honeymoon, but not my absolute resolve to never, ever, never, ever go near a camper trailer again as long as I live. Goodbye to the wilds forever and ever. Amen.
What's in a lemon gin?
Oh, yummy. It's alcohol and it's called lemon.
I mean, is it sugar and gin, probably?
And you drink it with water. Well, I drank it with water. After the honeymoon, I couldn't face lemon gin again.
For real? Oh, wow.
Suzanne, I'd always wanted to do that Polar Bear Express, but no more. I stroked it off my bucket list.
I had such a hangover. And I always get asked this question: did I stay married?
And
every time I tell that story, I get the question: did I stay married?
Yeah.
And my answer is sort of.
Oh dear.
Our differences, I mean, I romanticized our differences, but you know, sometimes it can work and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm so happy that I can make people laugh with this story now. And why not?
Yeah.
But I don't camp.
Well, thank you for that. I'm actually getting married this year, so that was
Don't camp.
No, I'm not a camper.
Yeah, honeymoons are overrated.
Yeah, right? We can't go anywhere.
Yeah, as is camping, but lemon gin might be underrated. Maybe you should.
I do like gin, so it's a good thing. All right, any questions for Suzanne? Or what, do you want to tell us what you're working on right now?
So I wrote 34 short stories, and I've had 5 published on Commuter Lit. I have 1 coming up published. I've written 2 plays, had them performed. When I retired in 2013 from high school, I was teaching high school and university at the same time, 2/3 university. There was a hole in my heart. And so when we writers, we need something, an impetus. I was so distraught when I finished teaching high school. I really didn't want to quit, but it was time. I was 65, for God's sake. And I was driven to, 74 in 2 weeks. So I was driven to write, but now I was forced to retire from the university because you cannot deliver my course online. You cannot. So here I am, first year retired, didn't want to retire, all the time in the world, and I can't write. I can't write, nothing comes. I have these books and I have others, but no, I'm not writing. I try to and nothing comes. We'll see.
It happens.
It happens.
It does happen.
Yeah, it does happen. So
I never force myself to write, so I just write whenever I feel like it.
Yeah.
So
I just need a fire in my belly. I need something. You know, the fire in the belly was my horrendous grief when I stopped teaching high school. It was a passion and a love. And I thought, you know, when I had to stop teaching the university, I'd have that passion, but it hasn't happened. We'll see. We'll see. And so maybe I'm going to be inspired by one of you.
Possible. You never know.
Grief is a powerful.
That's a challenge.
Thank
the heavy responsibility.
Thanks, Suzanne.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, of course. We'd love to have you. Thank you. Our next reader is June Cupido. She is a theater director, writer, and story weaver. Her current project, Truth and Illusion, is a soul-searching and intense creative process, challenging its performers to come up with a heartfelt personal narrative. June works with writers and performers to dig deep, a process of crafting narratives that she calls deep, dark, and delicious. Hi, June. What are you reading for us tonight?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. You were on mute, I think.
Oh, I'm just reading a little story I wrote called The Happy Club.
Awesome. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. He feels the music vibrate through the floorboards as the band begins to play. He looks over and there she is, amazing as ever. His body trembles with excitement and fear, and he asks himself, why did Hope marry me when she could have picked any guy? When he first met her, He looked her name up in the dictionary and it told him all he needed to know. That was her, bursting off the page in black letters. H-O-P-E, always believing that something good may happen. She made him look good, especially when they danced. Oh, it's not like he felt like a loser. Far from it. He kept quite in shape, had a successful firm, and his tall stature, blue eyes, jet black hair with silver white wisps brought him lots of glances. Hope always told him, "You're so full of yourself." They always laughed about it. They laughed a lot. Another reason why he loved her so much. They have a son, Julian, who inherited all of Hope's joy and strength. They are so much alike, and they see every challenge as an opportunity. Every single morning at the same time, in perfect harmony, they smile and greet each other. It reminds him not to take things for granted. Until several years ago, something happened that changed him. It all started the night he arrived home from a business trip to surprise them. He asked the taxi to drop him off at the end of the driveway. He discovered that the house was completely dark. Entering through the garage, he stopped. Something felt strange. It was so quiet. Then all of a sudden, he could hear Hope and Julian weeping. There was the sound of glass shattering and the banging of furniture. His heart was running faster than his legs could move. Dropping his bags, he staggered into the kitchen. He could see a reflection in an adjoining hallway mirror. Two large figures filling up a sack of his grandmother's silverware from a shattered glass cabinet. On the floor, Hope and Julian were tied up to the legs of the dining room table. He could see one man had a knife. They started to yell, "Where's the safe? Your good stuff, jewelry." One of them ripped off Hope's gag, hitting her across the face several times. She began to scream. Julian started to kick them back with his legs. A rage ignited in his bloodstream and filled him with a superhero adrenaline. He went back, grabbed Julian's baseball bat from the garage. Like a cheetah in full sprint, he raced down the hallway and he dive-bombed on his prey, attacking the two men. He couldn't remember anything past that moment, until he woke up in the hospital several days later with Hope and Julian at his bedside. He was so thankful they had a few cuts and bruises. They told him the traumatic story about how the robbers broke in. They told him how astounded they were with his surprise attack, whacking the two robbers left and right with the bat. The neighbors heard Hope screaming and called the police. He almost bled to death with the number of times he had been stabbed. Over the 2 years, he struggled to recover, and he's tried to be part of their happy club. Today is Julian's wedding day, and it's hard to believe that 5 years have passed since that dreadful night. He's sitting in his wheelchair, watching Hope dance with their son, and he just can't wipe the smile off his face. It's taken him a long time, but he feels privileged to witness them together. Hope and Julian finish their dance and they walk towards him. Hope takes his hands. Julian embraces the back of his wheelchair. Together they lead him on the dance floor. Like waiting for a beam of sunlight to break through the clouds, he feels for the first time everything will be okay. That feeling warms every cell in his body. Hope says he's the one who saved her, but Hope is the one who saved him. And after that near fatal encounter, he learned that things don't always make sense. But Hope has a way of taking care of all of us.
Thank you.
Sorry about the music at the beginning.
Hey, that's okay. You know what? It's stuck in my head now. I'm not gonna lie. I have that do 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 do. It's in my head now, so that's all good. Can you? I mean, has COVID affected what you're doing currently?
Yes.
Project.
Yes, I had the premiere event of my show was supposed to happen last spring, and I was doing 2 other big performances, and of course we had to cancel everything. So it's the script has been in the making for a couple of years, and it's called Truth and Illusion, and it's basically the story of how we use fear. We create illusion to hide our fears, and we created these 6 stories. I've weaved them together. We've written 5 songs. It's a musical. It's provocative, and I can't wait to birth it. I'm trying to get it in the schools or organizations, because it honestly, you can't help if you hear any one of the stories. You kind of, in one way or another, there's a part of you in somebody of the 6 stories.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Are you a musician as well?
I do some singing. I'm not. I have a piano here because I have a songwriter who works with me, Michael. Yeah. So. And
is All That Jazz your favorite movie?
I want to actually direct and put this on stage one day. Yes, it is.
It's a good one.
Very, very much Truth and Illusion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen it twice. I've seen Truth and Illusion twice. It's amazing. It really is inspiring.
That's great. Any questions for June? No, June, please feel free to make comments for June. And June, if you have any links or a website, and if anyone wants to get in touch with you, please feel free to post it in the chat. Thank you so much for reading.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. All right, our next reader is Lily Luchesi from Chicago. Lily Luchesi is a USA Today bestseller, author of horror and urban fantasy fiction for teens and adults. She also co-runs Partners in Crime Book Services, where she offers editing, graphic design, and other services for authors and publishers. In her spare time, you can find her watching Supernatural, reading manga, and listening to loud rock music. Is your mom there with you?
Yes, she's working right now, though.
Oh, tell her I say hi.
I will.
So you have a new book out. Do you want to talk about that first?
I do. I have it here with me.
Great.
Monster of an anthology. It's called Just a Little Wicked, and it is a box set featuring witches and magic that I curated. It's been a project for mine for over 2 years that I've been wanting to do, and this year finally allowed it to happen. My contribution in here is called Morgana's Revenge, and it is an Arthurian retelling from Morgan Le Fay's perspective. Anyone who was here last time knows that I do love witches, magic, and especially everything that occurs overseas. I'm Anglophile as well, and the story was really fun to write. I wanted to write it since 2018, and having it out there in the world after 3 long years of it just kind of sitting there is absolutely amazing, especially alongside so many other amazing writers.
That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. So are you going to read from that tonight for us?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Whenever you're ready.
I have my bookmark here somewhere. The scene, to set up the scene, because obviously I can't read the entire story. It would be a while. The King Arthur has threatened the magical coven where Morgan, Merlin, and Arthur's wife Guinevere also have lived, with renounce magic and join Camelot or die. And at this point, Merlin has renounced magic, and so has Guinevere. Morgan has not. And she's sitting in the coven watching all of these people just kind of vanish from her life. Her boots were silent on the worn stone as she went down 3 flights of stairs to the main hall of the castle. She waited behind the balustrade, ducked down, as 2 guards passed on their rounds. Once they were out of sight, she quickly made her way to the front doors, opening them with magic so as not to make any noise. It was warmer outside this autumnal evening than it was in, and a million stars twinkled above her, lighting her way. Of course, that also meant others could see her. Not that humans could easily come within the coven borders. It was better to be safe than sorry. Stellare, she whispered, casting the concealment charm over herself. It didn't render her invisible. Rather, apologies, rather it caused her to be unnoticeable were she quick and quiet enough, and no one should be looking specifically for her. She went around the back of the castle to where the wharf sat, feeding the river that ran through the coven and the rest of England. Surrounded by a copse of tall, thin trees on one side and lazily drifting weeping willows on the other, it was a beautiful place to be, even when clouded with horrible memories, including the vividity of the lurid description the paper had had of Acheron's death at the hand of Camelot's knights. Former witch outed as traitor, execution imminent. He had been stabbed 5 times with an iron blade, his heart removed, and burnt as the kingdom watched. The images haunted Morgan even when she slept, and now the paper had brought yet another blow to her aching heart, driving sleep even further from her. It was darker here by the lake, so Morgan took out her old yew wand and cast Stellare. The tip began to glow a bright, warm yellow. She sent the brightness of the tip to detach and float in the air some distance above her, illuminating the immediate surrounding area for her to see. She walked along the shore, watching the water, trying to shake the feeling that something odd was happening or going to happen. Part of her wondered if she should have gone the other way and sought advice from Pegasus. The newspaper headline flashed in her mind. Guinevere Breton will be the new queen of Camelot. Traitor, Morgan thought, the same rage burning in her heart for the past day flaring up again. Her and that wretched Merlin both. I hope they meet the same sticky end as Acheron. As she mused and fumed, the long, leaning willows to her left rustled. Immediately she was on edge, brandishing her wand as though she used it daily. That was too large to be a squirrel, she thought. Was it perhaps one of Pegasus' foals come to the water to drink, or perhaps a midnight swim? More rustling, this time further down, as if whoever was hiding didn't want to cross where she stood. Turning quickly, Morgan followed their gait, judging by the continuous movement of the branches. The moment a hand appeared, splitting the foliage to escape, she sent a blast of energy from the tip of her wand at the appendage. The blast barely singed skin, but she had not aimed to injure, rather to startle and capture. Bloody hell! The figure tried to retreat, but with another well-placed movement charm, they instead went flying into the clearing, stumbling in the tall grass. And Morgan was right. The intruder wore the insignia of Camelot on his cloak. Merlin, she whispered. The wizard in question whipped around, and she could now see that he was fully clad in human clothing, the insulting logo on his breast as well. He was on the defensive, wand brandished, until he realized whom he faced. Morgan, thank God, he said, lowering his wand. She didn't give him the opportunity to speak further. Ligabis she cast, binding him to the spot. Black eyes widened, and he cried, "No, wait." Morgan walked up to him and placed the tip of her wand under his chin, looking up at him. She was satisfied when she saw the fear flickering in his eyes. The queen warned you, like every other traitor in our midst, that returning to the coven would result in your immediate execution. Surely you cannot believe yourself to be so privileged to be exempt. No, you don't understand, he said quickly. Morgan smirked. All right then. The spell will hold another 10 minutes before I renew it. Tell me, what is it I misunderstand? He was at her mercy, and she knew that he knew she possessed very little of it. The queen is expecting me tonight, just like she has every fortnight since I had been 1 month within Camelot, he said. Take me to her, you'll see. At that she laughed. Oh yes, please allow me to take you to see our queen so you may unleash whatever convoluted plot Arthur thrusts upon you to undertake. Merlin cursed, something she never witnessed the quiet, polite boy do before. You're arguably the brightest witch in the world. Why are you so deliberately obstinate? Why do you think I believe your lies? She challenged, pressing the wand tip harder into his flesh. She did have a bit of a dilemma, however. Were she to kill him, it would open an investigation within the coven. Were she to take him to the queen or even the guard, it would open questions as to why she defied the rules and left the castle dorm so late. Unlike Fiona, Gwen, and Aquilon, Morgan was a horrible liar. In the end, it was best to take him to the guard and beg forgiveness for her minor transgressions. All right then, she said. If you're not lying, then the guard will back you up, will they not? Despite the rest of his body being frozen from the spell, Merlin whipped his head back and forth so quickly, Morgan wondered if she gave himself whiplash. No, no, they cannot see me, only the queen. Take me to her, Morgan. You've got me bound. I can't curse you. Can I? Guards are in the halls. How do you expect us to get to her chambers unnoticed? She asked, resigned. Either Merlin was mad or he had a plan so devious even she could not surmise it. He begged her to unbind his legs, and she did so reluctantly, knowing he couldn't cast magic with his hands bound. All right, he said, go around the back of the castle to the oak. Morgan kept her wand brandished and her eyes peeled for more unseen enemies. She desperately wished she had the ability to sense the presence of those who reserved for precious few magicians. When she spotted the oak tree, she asked, where to from here? Merlin shook his head. Go to the tree. You'll see. It was darker here. The forest was dense and the castle walls blotted out the starlight. Only her small magical orb gave her the ability to see and not trip on a root or fall into a trap. When they approached, Morgan asked, what exactly am I supposed to do here? They stood in front of the trunk. It was so old it was wider than the two of them standing side by side. She imagined 4 or 5 people could even fit comfortably inside of it. Merlin said, take your wand, tap the center of the trunk right between your eyebrows 3 times. Wait 3 seconds exactly. Tap 3 times again. A spot should begin to glow. She did so, and what he said occurred. He then instructed her to press her wand into the tree trunk. And as she did so, a large section began to glow. A long rectangle began high above Merlin's head and went down to the ground. With a rustling of leaves, the brand new door swung open, revealing a tunnel. What is this? She asked, concerned again that she was being led into a trap. What does it look like? He snapped. Come, I am already late. He walked a pace ahead of her into the tunnel, and she followed quickly so as not to lose sight. They were in a small archway the size of the tree, and the tunnel had a staircase going down, deep within the air. A bluish green light softly illuminated the otherwise pitch-black area, and Morgan spotted clusters of glowworms that seemed to thrive in this environment. Last she heard, they were only found in Scotland. How old is this place? Old. There's a chance it predates the castle itself, though no one knows what was there that led to it then. It's over 3 centuries, Merlin said. The stairs went down about a full story, leaving them deep beneath the ground. They leveled out and became a straight tunnel heading towards the castle. Morgan counted her steps, trying to gauge how far beneath the castle they were and where they were headed. It was impossible considering the near complete darkness. Keeping track meant nothing. This was a straight line, and the castle had twists and turns and staircases that led somewhere new every time they ascended. They finally reached the end of the tunnel, which led to a simple wood door with a normal handle. She opened it, letting in blessedly cool air. They were in the castle dungeons. Now she knew where she was, considering she spent most of her time here. They entered another hall, this one short and made of the same stone as the rest of the castle. They opened another door, moving past a large, heavy tapestry. As she entered, Morgan realized they were in the brewing lab. Somehow the tapestry had prevented her from ever seeing there was a doorway. A voice spoke in the distance. Merlin, it is about time. I was beginning to wonder if Pendragon. Oh, Morgana. The queen herself stood in the center of the room, lips pursed at the sight of the uninvited guest. I'm going to stop there and not take up too much of everyone's time.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me on again.
Oh, of course. I know we had some audio or internet issues with you last month, so we're happy to have you anytime. So now that you're done with this project, what are you working on now?
I'm currently working on a novella for my pen name Samantha Calcott, but for this pen name I have two very exciting projects coming up this summer. One of them is a paranormal detective series prequel, which is almost complete. It's releasing this June in the Summer Bites anthology. It's been a lot of fun to write. I call it a Victorian version of Camp Crystal Lake. I couldn't think of anything else to call it. And
that's the one sentence pitch if I ever heard one.
I've been practicing those for many years, so thank you. And it's going to follow Angelica Cross as she is 16 years old and still only a half vampire living in Victorian London, and her and a bunch of other paranormal children who have dignitary parents, and her parents are Lord and Lady of Vampires. They all have to get together and have camaraderie for 6 weeks during the summer. So it started as something that was going to be a little cute and turned into something that turned extremely bloody. And it, like I said, it was fun.
Awesome. I'm so proud of you, Lily. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Please post all of your websites and social media stuff in the chats for anybody who wants to get in touch with her or buy your book. Where can they get your books?
They can get all of my books on Amazon. I do have one book, The Coven Princess, which is wide on all publishers, including on library apps. So if you guys use your library, please go and get it there. I would really appreciate supporting local libraries. And but this particular set, Just a Little Wicked, it is limited. It's only available until the summer solstice. The paperback will be up a little bit longer because some of my readers who were overseas needed some more time to get it delivered. So that's just, if anyone wants to see how this story ends, it won't be there forever. And then it'll be another few months before I publish it myself.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Lily at this time? We always open it up at the end anyway. So thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
Say hi to your mama.
I will.
Okay. And last but not least, we have Mr. Les Bohem from California, where it's 80 degrees and we hate you. Okay.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Les Bohem was part of the great Los Angeles music scare of the early 1980s. His band Gleaming Spires had a cult-adjacent hit with their single, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls? If you ever saw Revenge of the Nerds, you know. At the same time, he was holding down a day job as the bass player with the legendary band Sparks. After his burgeoning career in rock and roll stopped burgeoning, Les started writing. He has written a lot of movies and TV shows, including A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, 20 Bucks, Daylight, Dante's Peak, The Alamo, and the miniseries Taken, which he wrote and executive produced with Steven Spielberg, and for which he won an Emmy Award, a Television Critics Award, and a Saturn Award. He has had songs recorded by Amy Lou Harris, Randy Travis, Freddie Fender, Steve Gillette, Jeanette Napolitano of Concrete Blonde, and Alvin of the Chipmunks. His first solo album, Moved to Duarte, was released a couple years ago, which I have right here. So,
oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Was released a couple.
I'm so glad somebody has it.
I do have it because you sent it to me.
You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say you bought it.
I bought it. I was the first person. I'm the biggest fan. It was released a couple years ago to rave reviews and absolutely no sales or downloads. So please buy it because it's so good. It's amazing. His Audible original novel Junk, narrated by John Waters, I love John Waters, was the best-selling Audible original in 2019. And the sort of sequel, Jive, will be up on Audible in March 2021, if there is a March 2021. We are past March 2021, so is it up? Is it up there?
It's up.
Awesome. He'll give it all up if you're looking for a bass player. Les has opted out of all social media, which is not true because he still stalked me on Instagram, and I know it. He refuses to pretend that anyone gives a shit. In case anyone does give a shit, he has a website, Les Bohem's wonderful world of lesbohem.com, which he keeps forgetting to update. So what are you reading for us, Mr. Bohem?
I thought I was just going to read just this little chunk of my new piece that's up on Audible, and maybe this one other short thing. And then I got this, I'm a fan of found art, and this, I'm going to read you this thing which I sort of cribbed from today's paper. I think it's a stunningly good short story. I'm going to mispronounce the names of the people, but they're all monsters, so they deserve it. And I got to do it on, I got to read it on my computer, so forgive my goofy stare. This just amazed me. I wish I'd written it, but give me credit for finding it. X videos and XNXX appear to be owned by mysterious French twins and based in a nondescript office building in Prague, not far from the Wenceslas Square. This building is the hub of a porn empire that gets 6 billion impressions a day and inflicts anguish all over the world. X videos and XNXX appear to be owned by the twins Stefan and Mallory Deborah Pacode, sometimes rendered as Deborah Mallory Pacode. The Pacodes, 42, avoid the media, but others in the industry said that Stefan Pacode began the business in about 2001 by copying images from pornographic magazines and putting them on a simple website that became XNXX. Fabienne Tellman, who helped build what became the Pornhub empire before selling it, described Stefan Pacode as a loner who devoted himself to his websites and other solitary pursuits. Even when in Vegas for conventions, he was often just in his hotel room working, Tillman said in 2012. Tillman offered to buy X videos for $120 million, but Pacode cut off the discussion and said he had to get back to playing a video game. I'm busy, Pacode scoffed, as Tillman remembers the conversation. I've no time to discuss this now. I'm playing Diablo 2. Thank you. I mean, if I had only written that. May I read a couple of more little things that I actually did write?
Yes, please do.
I am going to try and find this on the many open pages here. I think it will be easier that way. Give me 1 second. This is from Jive, which is the new novella that I have up on Audible. Sadly, not read by John Waters, although it's very, very well read. And I'm going to read it not as well. They were both 10 in the summer of 1997. Two boys who'd known each other all of their short lives. When they were together, nothing could hurt them. That night, they'd taken the 120 bus all the way out the Imperial Highway to the airport. That had been Stuart's idea, something he wanted to see. Alex had brought his mother's old transistor radio. On the bus, a lady had asked him to turn the radio down. He and Stuart had exchanged a smile, and then Stuart had reached over and turned the volume up. The song was Telling Lies by David Bowie. Its hard, ugly beat seemed to frighten the women. I love this song, Stuart said. I love what he's saying. They got off at the Sepulveda stop. It was about a 10-minute walk. Stuart had scoped it out already. He knew where to climb through a hole in the fence. Soon, they were on the runway. It had all been his idea, but now he hesitated as the plane took off, the slope of the road giving the illusion that the plane was coming straight for them. It's cool, Alex said. I'll watch out for you. Stuart believed him. He knew that as long as he was with Alex, he was safe. He followed his friend out along the dark runway, moving towards the landing lights. They lie on the cold cement, the salt air blowing warm over them. They stare up the sky. They seem to lie like this forever. There is the hum of something in the air, and then the huge jet swoops over them as it comes in for its landing. There is a moment where it is the whole world, a streak of cold steel from the sky. If this is what it would be like to die, then dying wouldn't be that bad. Stuart's hand comes out, takes hold of Alex's hand. It comforts both of them. Even lying flat on their backs, they are almost carried along the runway by the force of the landing. Then there is the thud behind them as the plane touches down. Thank you. My chapters are long. That one was short. I'd like to read one more thing, if I may.
Of course.
This is a short piece of mine called Bernie Wright. When I was 18, I wrote my first short story. I wrote it at my desk in an off-campus dorm at UC Santa Barbara, where I was just starting my second year of college and my first away from home. I remember that the story began with the sentence, Bernie Wright played saxophone. I don't honestly remember, and I think we're being honest here, whether I might have said alto or tenor sax. I guess that doesn't much matter. What does matter is that in the story, I showed a horrible prescience. Bernie Wright was a saxophone player. He was in love. His girlfriend, crush, wife, I don't remember which anymore, than I remember the register of his instrument, dumped him, and he was brokenhearted. He decided to pour his heart and soul into a solo, to express his pain and his loss through his art. I believe he got up to take this solo at the club where he was playing, but the sad fact was that Bernie Wright was a third-rate player. He did not have the technique or the genius to express what he felt through his art. A lot has happened in the more than 50 years since I wrote that story, but the bitter possibility of its truth haunts nearly everything I do.
You can't hear everyone clapping, but they are. That's awesome. Okay, so you have to fill me in, what are you working on that has to do with anime?
Oh, I'm working, a friend of mine who I've worked with on a couple of shows recently sold an anime to Netflix and asked me to help out on it. It's a lot of fun. We're almost done breaking the season. It's a absolutely insane werewolf piece called Big Bad Wolf.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I've never worked on anything like that before. I have questions that go, do I have to write this part or do the artists fix this? You know, like there's a running screenwriter joke that the longest sentence in a screenplay is then all hell breaks loose. I mean, there are parts of my day job that are hard, but there are parts that are a lot easier than prose because, like all I have to do is say exterior New York City and I'm done. I don't have to describe New York City.
Are you having this?
And everybody I'm working with is way crazier than I am, and their ideas are just like.
So, are you enjoying this or no? Is it?
I absolutely love it. I mean, people are all my friends, which is nice, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept of the writer's room, but it is one of the strangest beasts. In the history of Hollywood, writers have always been at the very bottom of the totem pole. And the first time that any writer rather than director has ever been treated with anything like respect is, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. We're better paid than other writers, but it's a director's medium, et cetera. So all of a sudden this thing happens where writers become famous because of television. They're called showrunners and they create these shows. And then they have this room full of writers and they barely write. It's just a bizarre beast. I mean, some of the greatest shows ever made have come out of those rooms, but it's very strange that in the time of the writer isn't writing. So, but they're fun. They're, no more lonely and all by yourself at the keyboard. You just sit in a room and confess all your sins to your friends and write stuff down.
And are you working on any music?
I've got a ton of songs, and I'm hoping that this anime will finance my next record. So I can put out a second record that no one listens to.
Hey, I do. I love you. How does anyone find this? How does anyone purchase this?
You don't have to buy it. You can just listen to it. It's on every single platform, and I don't need you to buy it. I just need you to listen to it.
I'll burn you CDs, everybody, because I if people still listen to CDs, I don't even know. I do. So
no, they don't. But yeah, you can find it on every single platform.
So do you
enjoy
music more or writing for movies or television? Like, what's your preference?
I mean, if in my dream world, I would be. Well, I wouldn't be John Prine because he's dead, but I would be John Prine.
Nice.
I love them both, and my day job has been like ludicrously good to me. And, you know, I'm a grown man and people pay me to make stuff up and there's nothing wrong with that. but I was a musician first and you know, it's more immediate and, you know, I mean, you actually play live, you know, you get all the cheesy affirmation that you need right there and then instead of, you know, third hand when somebody tells you they read something you wrote. So bittersweetly, that's what I like best. But you know, I'm delighted to be, you know, working and making stuff up.
You are a treasure, and I love you.
Terribly nice to say. Well, right back at you. And are you not going to read any of your own stuff today?
I am not tonight because we're running way over. But you have all my stuff anyway, so it's all good. If he wrote the foreword to Love in a Trash Can, my third book of poetry, so that explains actually how we came about meeting. Yeah, so I'm so happy to have you and see your face.
Likewise, that was really fun, and it's really an honor to be with all you people. You guys were great.
We lost a lot of people along the way here, so does anyone have any questions for any of our talented writers and readers tonight?
Well, Joanne, before we do that, I just want to thank you for you know, creating, well, you and Shannon originally, for creating this opportunity to bring writers from, as it turns out, from Canada and the United States together into this space, and such a variety of people writing in different genres and from different backgrounds. And I just really, you know, want to thank you both for making this opportunity possible. And it's been a real, as it is every month, it's been a pleasure meeting all these different writers, some who've come back, but always new writers each month. And I just think every one I've heard tonight, you know, has taken me on a different journey, and you know, to places I've not been before, and yet in some way I recognize aspects of those places in myself, if that makes sense. So anyway, thank you very much. And I put your Etsy site in the chat. So.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I was supposed to do a giveaway, so I'm gonna get this man over here to draw a name. We lost some people, so hopefully I have their contact information. If not, I'll draw another name. I don't know what else to do, but who is it? Holly Sanders. I think she's gone. So we'll draw another name. I don't know who she is, but thank you for joining. Pardon?
She's my sister.
Oh, she's your sister?
Oh.
She tunes in from Dallas to support and listen. So
okay, can you send me her information then, and I'll send her a gift pack?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
That's good. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks everybody. Does anyone have any questions for anybody?
Well, I just, again, if I can, I just wanted to, I think Laura's, is Laura still there?
I think, yeah, she's still here.
Laura, I think Karen mentioned this earlier, but I'm just really struck by the way that you integrate personal tale with mythology and folk tale. And, you know, with that in mind, listening to everyone tonight, I could hear that even if it wasn't talked about explicitly. I think you mentioned something at the end of your discussion about all our stories being connected to something greater than our individual personal tales, as important as they are. We are connected to something much older and greater, which I don't know if this is getting too philosophical, but you know, that redeems us in the end, you know, that's all I want to say. Everybody's stunned.
Still looking for that redemption myself.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we may never find it in this lifetime, but it happens. It'll happen.
Well, I just want to thank everyone who's still on the line. I know a lot of people kind of dropped off because we're running a little late tonight, but that's okay. That's cool. We had a little technical difficulty at the beginning. So I just want to thank everybody who's read for us and everyone who joins in. My friends.
Here comes Holly for her prize.
Oh, there she is. It's been really cool. I love that people have connected to each other and met new people, and networking is big in the art world. So it's been really special. I feel really good about having done this and giving the opportunity to everybody to read and do something, during this lockdown. I don't know if everyone knows, but Ontario's at stay at home again. So it's kind of boring and there's not been much to do. And, we can't really go anywhere.
We can write. We can write.
We can write. We can
go
listen
places
to music
in our minds.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I know my brother and my sister join every single month. My brother's still on. Hello. If you remember him, he's read a couple of times for us too. It's been really cool. So that's been a fun experience. So it's been really great. So I really appreciate all of you.
And lovely to see you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you
it's so much fun
for
because
that.
it's so difficult to have someone like me being a genre writer, whereas everyone else here is a bit more literary, and you're bringing so many different people together from all fiction, all walks of life. And this is really cool. I hope that it can pick up again, even when, if COVID restrictions, are ever over. I would love to keep doing this.
Oh,
Lily,
good.
I wouldn't be surprised at all that we're back in some form or other in the future.
I think so. I think, just during the summer months, people want to be outside. They want that summer air and fresh air. I know I do. I have some big things coming up. I'm moving and getting married and all that stuff. So
yeah, good luck.
Yeah, those are good.
Good luck. Good luck.
With the honeymoon.
I would say those are fair.
Thanks.
Write about it, Joanne. We love to hear about it.
I can't write when I'm happy, so give me a.
Well, you might not be happy.
I was gonna ask you. Your husband's either in for a literary grilling or your poetry's gonna really change.
I think so. I mean, he's an artist too. He paints and does photography. So I think we're gonna work on some stuff together. That's the plan when we're actually in the.
Please don't start writing happy little love poems.
Oh, please.
Look what happened to Paul McCartney when Linda showed up.
I'm too old. I don't know. I think I'm okay.
Guys.
I mean, I think I might just work on other projects for the meantime until I get unhappy in my marriage, like everyone else, apparently. And then I'll start writing poetry again.
You can call on former angst. It doesn't.
Turn on the news. That'll probably help.
I love that you guys have so much faith in our marriage. It's so good.
Wow, we do.
No, he's awesome.
And folks, you can extend your journey by following the links to the websites and various contact details, so you can learn a lot more about each writer, and that I'm sure that will keep you occupied for weeks, So until we're all back here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
bubble album is going to take you all,
Les, your website is there is just so much in there to follow up on.
Am I still on there? Did you take my name down?
I haven't looked in so I'm sure you're there because I haven't looked in a year.
That's good.
No,
I think
it was
I'm
still there,
on
Joanne. Yeah,
I'm still there. Woo! I got a shout out. There you go.
And a number of these people I know do workshops as well.
Yes.
I know Laura does some storytelling workshops, and a lot of these, of course, are online, so anybody can get into them. So lots of wonderful stuff going on, and I'm just so grateful for writers supporting writers. It's a wonderful community.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So thanks everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm gonna
go for dinner. Everybody's stomping upstairs.
I'm gonna enjoy my Best Western experience here in Burlington. So.
Okay. Good night, Joanne.
Bye,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night, June, Anita, Jen, Diamond Dan. Oh, there he is. Kim.
See you tomorrow, Diamond Dan. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
I'll turn the lights off. I'll be the last one to turn the lights off.